Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 45 of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Ersman. Super grateful to be your host today for our last episode of 2021. And hey, it is Christmas week, so I wish you a very Merry Christmas. And I hope wherever you are today, you've had a great week, great time celebrating, hopefully with friends and family, and just wish you a really, really Merry Christmas. Speaking of that, I know it's a busy time, so thank you for squeezing in this episode of the Lead Pods. We've got a return guest. I'm grateful to have back on the show Nate Yoder from MB Foundation. We had him on earlier this year to talk about a few financial things, but this time we go deeper and we really tackle a little bit of everything really related to financing. Budgets, how much should you pay for your mortgage, when should you start paying or saving for your kids' college, cryptocurrency, will planning. We really hit just about everything. So I know at the end of the year, a lot of us start thinking about New Year's resolutions, and so maybe finances is extra on your mind because of that, or maybe you're spending out a little bit out of control in December, which is very easy to do. So whether you've kind of got a really strict budget that you stick to all the time, or if you could use a little bit of help here and there with your finances, really Nate hits a lot today, and I think you're going to find his tips really helpful. And MB Foundation really does offer a lot of great tools for us in the MB family. So without further ado, let's take a quick break to hear from MB Foundation, and then we'll get right to my conversation with Nate Yoder.
MB Foundation provides biblical financial stewardship solutions to the Mennonite Brethren community. Inspired by 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, we encourage and assist individuals, churches, and ministries to take hold of real life through generosity. We call that giving meaning to money. Our services include planned giving, loans, fund management, investment certificates, and stewardship education. With offices in Hillsborough, Kansas, and Fresno, California, we are ready to serve you. Learn more at www.mbfoundation.com or call us today at 1-800-551-1547. MB Foundation is pleased to partner with USMB to bring you this episode of Lead Pods.
All right, my friends. Well, I'm excited to welcome back to the show Nate Yoder is joining us from Fresno. Nate is the Chief Development Officer at MB Foundation. And we had Nate back on our show back in February to talk about finances and how we can honor God with how we spend our money. And finances is a big topic. So we're going to have him back and we'll kind of roll through some new things that we didn't get a chance to talk to last time. So Nate, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks, Matt. It's great to be here again.
Nate, it's the end of the year. People, end of December, early January, New Year's resolutions are on a lot of people's minds. I know finances is typically one of the top things that people kind of focus on as they're trying to do that. So that's kind of our goal for today. We're going to cover a lot of ground. We'll try not to move too quickly, but just kind of an overview of personal budgeting, retirement, will planning, some of this stuff that obviously I'm sure it comes second nature to you. You've done this for a while, but for a lot of us, if we haven't really been trained, it just seems kind of foreign. We're not really sure where to start. So I appreciate you being willing to do that. And one thing I was thinking, I know some people my age and younger, 20s and 30-year-olds who they've kind of been trained in this. They're financially minded, so they've got a really great plan. Other people my age have no clue. But it's also true for some of the older people who might be listening. It's not necessarily an age thing. Whatever age or stage you are, you may or may not have some resources that'd be helpful to get your finances in order. So that's where we're going to get started today. So really quick, I want to give you a chance, Nate. If people don't know about MB Foundation, what's kind of your elevator pitch of what MB Foundation does and what you do for them?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And first of all, you're right. This isn't an age thing, right? It's managing our resources it's a lifelong journey that we all have to do with intentionality and what we know, the family we grew up in, our own personalities, our own situations all affect that. But at MB Foundation, we say our purpose is to help give meaning to money. And that involves wise planning, wise use of the resources God's entrusted to us. Generosity, how do we use this to make a difference? And all of that happens best when we're intentional and not just reactive to whatever happens. And so whether it's a lot of, we provide investment opportunities, and we may talk about those later. We help people plan not just for this life, but even after they're gone with the will planning and estate planning you talked about. And then we just encourage wise planning and wise generosity. So this just fits with what we believe we're called to do. So we're just happy to have the opportunity to talk more about it together with you.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. You guys have a lot of great things to offer. So I appreciate you sharing with us today. So let's just start with budgeting. And again, I know some people probably have a really detailed budget already that they keep, really close track of. Some people probably don't do anything. And then a lot of people probably do something in the middle. I remember, Nate, like when I first got my kind of first job out of college, my first paycheck started rolling in. I mean, I really had no clue. Like, I was like, okay, can I afford this apartment? I'm not really sure. I think I can. And, oh, how much are utilities? I have no idea. I know they're different every month. That's weird. And so, I mean, let's just start from the basics. If people need help getting started with a budget, where do we start with that?
That's a great question. And there's lots of different, well, first of all, let's start with the word budget, right? Some people don't even like that word and they react to it. The reality is we will all spend our money somehow. And a budget is really just a proactive plan about how you will spend that.
Right.
So, don't get hung up on the word. You're going to spend it. It's just a budget is really just a plan to think through before you spend it, which helps you then have better sense of where it's going and even meet what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you start with a budget? Well, let's look at a couple different ways. And maybe I'll start with sort of a real big picture and then kind of we'll move down to some more details. So, some people like to track every detailed penny where they spend. Others find that overwhelming. So let's start with a more big picture. A model I like is to say, is what's called the 50-30-10-10 approach. So what does that mean? So Basic budget, 50% can go to your needs. And we'll come back and talk about what those needs are.
Okay.
30% can go towards your wants. 10% we believe should go to giving and supporting causes God calls you to give. Mm-hmm. And then 10% to savings and or debt repayment. So that's real big. So 50, 30, 10, 10. Now let's go back and look at the 50, right? So what is a need, right? Well, obviously you have to have a house that you live in, right? Some sort of housing. And many people would say your housing should be 25 to 30% of your income. And the reality is, if you get much higher than that, it's going to squeeze something else. Transportation. Many people would say 10% is probably a good range for transportation. And I can talk a bit more about that later. What else falls into needs? Utilities, right? 5-10% probably. If you have a loan, I would include your minimum loan payments in there, because if you don't make your minimum loan payments, you got a whole other set of problems, right?
Right.
If you have children and you need childcare, that would be a need, unless you would choose to change how you meet that. Insurance, I would put insurance in this list, and by insurance I mean auto insurance. I mean, frankly, if you have minor children, life insurance should probably be on here, because hopefully nothing happens to you, but if something does, you want them cared for. And the list could go longer, but those are some of the big rocks, if you will, that I would put in that need category. Mm-hmm. So you add those different numbers up. If housing's 30%, transportation's 10, well, now you're already at 40, and you only got 10% left. So it's very possible that for a younger person starting out, still has perhaps some college debt, perhaps is not making as much as they will in 10 or 20 years, that you'll have to bump that 50% needs number higher, and that's okay. It's just you're going to have to flex it somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yep, definitely.
So I kind of like that big picture approach. The 50-30. And actually, before we talk about others, let me just make a comment about transportation.
Okay.
10%. People sometimes say, well, how much should you spend on cars? Should you take out a loan for a car? Ideally, you don't have a loan on a car. But the biggest thing I would say is if you don't have a loan on a car, particularly if you're younger, keep making a car payment. But just make it into savings. Because you will need a car someday.
Right.
And
Yep.
if you haven't saved it all for it, when you need that car and you have to finance it all, you'll find a way to make that payment.
Right.
You just will.
Yep.
But if you've made that payment regularly, you'll either have enough to buy the car in cash, or if you do still borrow some because you want to buy a little bit better car, your monthly payment will be much, much lower than if you had done nothing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
So I would keep that transportation amount in your budget unless, whether you have a payment or not, because you will need it at some point.
Yeah.
So 50% to needs, 20% to wants. So, well, what's wants? Gifts, right? Entertainment, travel. Now, again, if you live far away from your extended family and you want to go see them, well, that travel might slide into a need to some level a bit more. So these are, you can flex these, but it's still a general principle. Dining out, clothing, those are some of the things that often I would put under the wants category. And I think 20% is a reasonable amount. 10% for giving, supporting the causes God calls you to, and then 10% to savings or debt repayment. And I think if you follow this type of general pattern over time, I think you will end up in a good place because you've been intentional and proactive. Is that a helpful?
Yeah, that's good. I think for a lot of people, it's just hard to know even where to start. And if you Google it, you can find all kinds of things. So just having a good basis like that is really good, I think.
Just that you often hear about, savings. You often, if you Google anything, you'll have some emergency savings so that when an emergency comes up, what do you do? How do you meet it? So many say you should have 3 to 6 months living expenses. And I remember being at a spot where you go, oh, there's no way that's even possible. Again, don't be discouraged. Start with, okay, how do I get to $1,000? That's in emergency savings. Start with that. And, it can be towards your debt, come out of that 10% of your savings debt repayment. Once you get that $1,000, well, hey, maybe you celebrate a little bit. Actually go out to eat, say, hey, we met that goal, and then you plug back in to keep building it. And if you do that over time, it will keep accumulating. And just a little plug here for MBF. We do offer investment opportunities. You can take out certificates with us that will often pay a higher rate of return of interest than you'll find at your local bank. So, you're looking to say, hey, I should start a certificate or I start a savings. Check us out for an opportunity because it earns you a good rate of return. And the money that is then used to make loans to churches, to ministries. So it's even the investment as it's earning a good return for the investor. It's also going for causes that are part of God's kingdom and not just profits to some sort of company. So that's the little shameless plug to where we can all win, right? The kingdom can win and savers can win, and it can be a great thing.
No, that's great. And we might end up coming back to some budgeting things, but since we're here on the saving and investing side of things, at least for me personally, I'm guessing this is fairly common. Once you have whether you have like a detailed budget or you're just living and figuring out how to pay things off, however detailed you are, eventually you kind of get into a system where you at least have, whether it's a good one or not, you at least know how to operate month to month, right? So I think investing is kind of that next level where if you're sort of settled and you're paying your bills and again, maybe you're not, overwhelmed with bucket loads of cash, but at least you've got something figured out. Investing is another thing that just seems scary. We know we need to save, but then there's things like, do I need to save specifically for my kids' college? Do I need to save specifically for, should I get into stocks and bonds and stuff, or should I just have cash on hand? Should I start paying off my house early? Like, I think a lot of people know that, like that 10%, I think a lot of people get 10% savings is great, but they have no idea where to actually put that money or what to do with it. So again, can you take us from starting place to maybe some baby steps above starting place? If we have a 10% set aside, what do we actually do with those dollars?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And probably you'll get different answers who you ask. The key with investing is, everyone the stories make the headlines of, the amazing returns, and this guy bought $1,000 of crypto and it went crazy, and he's now, on YouTube blogging about it or talking about it. Everyone says, how do I find the next big, amazing return? And those things happen, but that's the anomaly. That's the exception. The biggest thing is investing is frankly time. Wise investments and time, they grow, and that's where you get your return. So the biggest thing is to start investing in a reasonable investment. And I've told my own kids this. One is in her second year out of college job, others still in college, but said, start investing. Yeah, your emergency savings, that's just cash for return, but start with your retirement accounts. Do you know that if you invest in a retirement account from 25 to 35 and then stop, don't put another dime in it, you will essentially have the same amount when you retire as if you would have waited to start at 35 and invested clear up to 65 and then stop. If you compare those two, the one who did 10 years early ends up with just about the same amount as a person who invested for 30 years because they started 10 years later.
That's crazy. And I think it makes everyone mad at the 25-year-old version of themselves, right?
That's exactly right. We can only all go back, right?
Yes.
But it's the power of time. It's the power of compound interest. Sometimes compound interest has been called the eighth wonder of the world because that's what it does. But and I'm not saying you should stop investing at 35. To be clear, I'm not saying that.
Right.
But it's an example of how time is your friend, and it starts early. So, if I tell my kids this, you're young, start out. A lot of employers will offer what they call a company match. So, you put money into a retirement account and the company will match it. Sometimes it's up to 3%, sometimes it's up to 6% or so. But the beauty of that is, every match is $1. That's a gain for you, right? So you put in 3% of your income and they match it with 3%. Well, you've already earned 3% right there, which you can't earn anywhere just sticking it in a cash account right now. So that's where I would start. I would start with, are you maximizing your company match? Because that is free money, frankly, that you can't get anywhere else. And then how much, ideally 10% of your, up to 10%, some would say 15%. If you start at 25, putting between amounts you put in and company match, if you put in 10% of your salary in retirement, you will be in much better shape than the vast majority of the public when you get to 65. So that's where I would start.
Okay.
Start early, start young.
So you would start with like a straight up retirement account and then add things like kids' college or additional stocks and bonds or whatever. So you start with retirement and then add those things later. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, I would start with retirement and the emergency fund, ideally the 3 to 6 months, but certainly again, if you have none, aim for 1,000 and then aim for 5 and then figure out. I would prioritize those and then do the kids' college, after that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And another question I've heard people ask before, and again, there's probably a wide variety of opinions, but when do you start saving for retirement, or is it better to start paying off student loans, or how do you do those things at the same time? Is it better to do you do the math of the interest rates and play that whole game, or how do you prioritize debt reduction versus savings?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's, again, you're going to get different answers, and it can even probably vary from situation to situation, right? When I was coming out of college, interest rates were 8-10%. Wow, paying down debt early was a huge thing, right? Mm-hmm. But now interest rates are much, much lower. So that can change things, but it's always nice to get out of debt. But yet long-term investments are good. So, if I were sitting down with a 25-year-old who says, I've got 25,000 in college debt, I don't have any money in emergency savings. And what do? I would probably say, okay, if your employer has a company match, put in at least enough to get it matched.
Okay.
That's free money.
Yep.
I think you still want $1,000 or so in emergency savings, because something happens and your only option is to throw it on a credit card, and you can't make the payments, and then you have high interest rates. Like, that tends to snowball. So it kind of protects you. And then after that, I would work at, how do I put extra onto the student loan?
Okay.
Again, this is a broad picture.
Sure.
But that's kind of how I would sort it through. And again, it's a journey, right? Like, you're not going to get there. Overnight. But speaking of loans and debts, so we talk a little bit about if you do have a debt sort of hole to dig out of, what's a good approach?
Yeah, let's do that. I think we briefly talked on that last time, but yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we'll just hit it quickly. But people talk about the debt snowball. So you always make your minimum payments, right? So you don't get penalized. But many people would say, take your smallest loan amount and any extra money, pour it into that, and you'll pay it off quicker.
Yep.
So then when that gets paid off, again, reward yourself a little bit. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Maybe enjoy a little bit of a dinner out or something to celebrate, and then right back to it. And whatever you were putting on that debt, go to the next debt and just keep paying extra. So you pay minimum on everything, pay extra on the smaller amounts, and it begins to build. And the psychology of, hey, I got rid of one, helps keep you on the path, because it can get discouraging. If you're giving up going out to eat, or your friends are doing that gets there's a psychological weight that bears to you.
Sure.
But you do that over time, and it begins to just speed up the process. And that many people have had great success with that kind of approach.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, because I think so much of money is psychological, right? Like, of course, like all of us know, if you savings better than spending, whatever. But in our day-to-day lives, there's just so many things that we want. Sometimes that psychology wins out over what we know we should do. So yeah, it makes sense to do that. Okay, so another question I have. So let's say, again, if people have some of these basics figured out, let's say they've got their budget, they're contributing to their retirement, they're working on debt reduction. Let's say if someone wants to do some investing beyond that. Let's say they've got, I don't know, $100, a couple $100, whatever dollar amount. They want to do something. And one thing that always drives me crazy when I get my bank statements, and if I've got a savings account and I see that I've got, like, it's been in there for years and there's like 10 cents of interest, right? Because those savings interest rates are so minuscule. So if they want to earn a little bit more than fractions of a penny, what would you recommend for a kind of next step, first step of investing beyond retirement?
Yeah, well, if you want to just earn cash and earn a higher rate of return than that, come to our certificates. There's
Okay.
a shameless plug. I think the biggest thing is, when do you need the money? So if you need the money potentially in a couple of years, you probably want to still keep it in certificates, more short-term investments. If it's farther down the road, then you can begin to look at mutual funds, that type of thing, even if it's in a non-retirement account. Individual stocks obviously are more risky than mutual funds. And many people increasingly are using index funds, which sort of, tracks this part of the market, and they have lower costs. So you can go to any investment website, and we have advisors who are happy to talk to people, but, put in, here's how much I have to invest. Here's the time frame I'm looking, and you can even take surveys. Do I want aggressive approach? Do I want a more cautious or balanced approach? And they will often customize for you. Here's a good mix of a portfolio. I think 80% of active money managers don't beat the market, although they all tell you that they do. And so for just a small investor, I would just start with an index fund and kind of use their recommendations.
And that's another thing. I think a lot of people, they're intimidated by the number of decisions you have to make, right? Like how aggressive do I want to be? Do I want to be conservative? I think for a lot of average people, like I think I'm a fairly average person when it comes to this kind of thing. Like, I don't really know. Like, I just want to set aside some money that'll grow over time. And so I think it's intimidating to know, which funds and how, when you take surveys like that, how aggressive do you want to be? On the little bit of research I've done, if you look at Ramsey or whoever, they'll all basically just say, if you're relatively young, just be like crazy aggressive, right? Like, I think some of us are kind of like, well, that seems scary, right? To put everything in a fund that's labeled aggressive, and like they're kind of warning you, this might all go away. Like you have to sign off on all those kinds of things. But the experts will tell you just to be pretty aggressive. Would you agree with that? Or if someone is kind of overwhelmed by those decisions, what advice would you share?
No, I would agree with that. Some of the rule of thumbs are take 110, subtract your age, and that you should have, so I'm 50, 110 minus 50 is 60. I should have at least 60% in stocks. And I'll be honest, I'm more aggressive than that.
Okay.
And some would go 120 because stocks outperform. And the biggest thing with being aggressive is, yes, if there's a downturn, it can go down farther. Mm-hmm. But if you have a longer time frame and you can leave it in, then it comes back. And so, that's where, again, when do you need the money? If you're just putting some money into investment, if I'm 30 and I think, okay, I have some extra money, but I might need it in 10 years. Well, then it's not about your age. Then it's about, okay, I can't be as aggressive because I'm going to need this. So even if the big downturn, you go back 100 years or more in the market, even with big downturns, if you can leave it in long enough, mm-hmm. it comes back. Yeah. And that's why they say that. But you have to be comfortable, right? If right. you're more comfortable with not quite as aggressive, then that's, at the end of the day, the biggest piece for most of us is a consistent plan and investment over time. Mm-hmm. And so that's more important even than did I get the exact perfect, match, because none of us knows the future, right?
Right.
And if the market drops down and you still have money to invest, frankly, to keep investing is a good thing, because then you're buying at a lower part of the market, mm-hmm. which is a better part for the return.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Another question I'm not really sure how to ask, but for a lot of people, let's assume the person listening has a full-time job. They've got some kind of family, whether they're married or with kids or whatever. Everyone's busy, right? Life is just complicated. Everything's difficult. It feels like we don't have a whole lot of spare time to devote to this kinds of things. One thing I've thought about, so like this year, for example, we've gotten all these stimulus checks, right? I have 2 kids, so I'm getting this child tax credit. And like this year, I've gotten more money that I didn't, quote unquote, budget for those kinds of things. And so there's part of me that wants to take advantage of that and do something that will be beneficial more than just spending it or putting it again in the savings account where I get nothing. But it just feels like life is busy and it's hard to make those kind of adjustments. So rule of thumb, with all that background said, how often should we look at our finances to make those kinds of decisions? Do you recommend quarterly sitting down with someone, or how often do we need to kind of reevaluate some of those kinds of things?
That's a great question. So let me back up a little bit, actually. So one helpful tool just for money management in general, there's a website called moneywise.org.
Okay.
And they have an app called MoneyWise app, which is a very good app, which lets you track your budget, track your spending. And you can do it whether it's, I want to know every single detail, of each percentage for every line item, or they can do what's sometimes called the envelope method, which is closer to that 50, 30, 10, 10, which is it kind of puts your money in the big categories. And then you can pull up your app and say, I'm out of this envelope for this month. I got to wait.
Okay.
So honestly, when you come up with a plan, and the more you can automate it, the less time you have to spend. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, whether it's savings, debt reduction, you can any of us can automate the savings. It can automate the investments, the deposits. So the more you can do that, the less time it takes.
Right.
So the question that really comes, once you get a plan in place, how often do you evaluate it?
Yeah. Yep.
So it could be quarterly, especially if it's new, and you kind of go, okay, how's this working? Or you have, like you just described, the stimulus. Okay, this was an unanticipated benefit, or it changed the plan, right? So then it's worth sitting down and looking at. Certainly, maybe every quarter. I would do it at least probably twice a year, or end of the year. You know what your raise is going to be next year. you find all that out. Well, that's a great time to have a conversation to look at, is our budget reasonable? I mean, I know my wife and I from time to time have said, oh, we didn't have a realistic plan. We got to adjust. Quick aside, one way to pay more debt down or add more savings is to, when you get a pay raise, just don't change your budget, except put more into debt or into savings.
Yep.
You know, that's an easy way to build it. So I don't know if I've answered your question specifically. I think it can vary, but you know, it's the more you automate it, the more if you don't have to do it as much. And then if you know what your goals are, so you get a windfall, okay, I can invest some. Hey, it's an opportunity to do something special and create a memory with the kids. I mean, those are the kind of discussions you have. But if you have a plan and you regularly evaluate it, I think you're in good shape.
Okay, good. Two more kind of practical questions I thought of, and then I know we want to talk about will planning a little bit. So maybe kind of rapid fire here. Where do you land on credit cards? That's something, again, I've heard all kinds of things on. Are you okay with credit cards? Is it wise to use credit cards to get the points and the rewards? Or I've heard the whole thing of, you know, if you actually use cash, again, the psychological thing, you spend less when you use cash. Where do you land on credit cards?
Yeah, that's a great question. The studies show that you spend less if you use cash. So for some that works, which ironically, that is where the MoneyWise app can be helpful, because it can give you a real-time update essentially of where you are with your cash, even if you're using, you know, credit cards or debit cards. But, you know, at the end of the day, credit cards are a tool, right? You probably need one just to get a credit score in our day and age, but you have to manage it wisely. Yes, points can be an amazing thing, but only if you're not also, you got to pay them off every month.
Right.
And if you're spending more and blowing your budget, no, it's not a good thing. So I don't say absolutely yes or no, but I think it's only a tool. And if you can't use the tool, or if the tool's pushing you to make bad decisions, well then no, don't use it. But if it's a helpful tool and you're able to use it and manage it, then it's nothing inherently wrong with a credit card.
Okay, good. So that seems to be a moderate kind of common sense approach. I like that.
Well, So, I mean, I use credit cards by paying bills that I would pay already, like my auto insurance and other stuff. Yeah, I get points, I get extra benefit.
Right, sure.
So I'm not increasing my budget, I'm getting an added benefit. But if I was carrying a balance, no, it would be best to just cut it up.
Yeah. Cool. So if you pay it off and don't spend extravagantly, the points are worth it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I agree. Okay, kind of last kind of nitty gritty detail or question I have. Where do you land on paying off your mortgage? Like, do you recommend people kind of aggressively work at cutting down their mortgage every month, or is savings just or more important, or how do you prioritize paying off your mortgage?
Yeah, I think it's going to vary from situation to situation. There is something nice about not having a debt payment. There's a psychological thing that comes from that. So I never want to speak against paying off debt. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Again, that said, you know, when I was 20, 25, interest rates were 10, 12%. Well, the stock market typically does 8%. Like it made sense to pay it off early.
Okay.
When interest rates are 3%, 4%, 5%, well, you can also make a case that if your mortgage payment's reasonable in your budget and you're using that extra money for other investments or other savings, you can make a reasonable case that you don't have to rush to pay it off.
Okay.
But certainly if the question is, do I pay off my mortgage with extra money, or do I just spend it on lots of wants? No, absolutely.
Right.
Pay off the mortgage first. But if you have other reasonable, helpful, long-term, if you have 3 to 6 months in savings, or if you don't have that, you know, I would build that up before I put extra on my mortgage.
Okay.
So it kind of varies from situation to situation, if that makes sense. So yes, pay it off before you just do more once. If there are other smart financial decisions that can be made, it may make sense to make those before you just pay it off first.
Yeah, gotcha. I think there's that psychological thing of it sure be nice to not have to have this if I could pay it off, but it makes sense that things might actually pay off more if you do other investing. So,
and if you pay it off, okay, great. Now, what will you do with that payment? How do you then use it to also make wise investments.
Yep.
Because if you want to pay off your mortgage just so you can go on more vacations, but you only have 2 months savings, well, that's not wise either.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Okay, so will planning. I know that's another thing that I think we all know it's good, it's important, we should do it. But for most of us, it feels far off. It doesn't feel like we have to do it today. So we just kind of put it off. Talk about will planning. What do we need to know about will planning?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's not urgent to most of us, particularly when we're younger. And it's, we're getting into stuff that, again, can be overwhelming. We're talking about end of life, and none of us like to talk about that kind of stuff, right? Like, so there's lots of reasons we don't talk about it. But the reality is, we're all going to need a plan for what happens when we die.
Yeah.
And we all will die at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Not talking about it doesn't change that fact.
Right.
And there actually is a plan. If we don't write out a plan, the state we live in they have a plan that they will enact. So, I sometimes say, you have a will, you have an estate plan. The question is, did you write it or did the state write it?
Right. Right.
So we all need to find a way to say, hey, how do I engage this? Yeah. And there's great opportunity here. If it's an opportunity to think through, how do I want to pass on my values, make sure my family's cared for? How do I support charities and ministries that I support? So there actually is, and you know what, there's a lot of security in knowing that it's been planned. So whether it's the 10-year-old who hears of a tragedy in the news because parents were killed in a car accident, God forbid, and they wonder what happens to me, that is what happened to my mom and dad. Yeah. Be able to tell them, we have a plan, and if something were to happen to us, here's who would take care of you. Yeah. That gives real security to the child, right? Yeah. Yeah. I'm 50, and I've heard people my age say, boy, we are really glad to know mom and dad have a plan. Yeah, sure. There, it's not about how do I survive because my guardians are gone, but there we have all heard stories of families that get torn apart because things weren't cared for and planned. So there's real security for children of all ages to know, hey, mom and dad have a plan in place, and it's just wise stewardship to do. So, if you don't have one, you should work to do it. Yeah, that's good. And again, I think for a lot of people, again, they know that, but it just seems overly complicated, right? Like, do I need a lawyer? How do I start this? How do you start with that whole process? Yeah, well, this is a lot of what we do is biblical estate planning. You can go to our website, click on will planning, and we have advisors who can talk to you. But in general, there are questions that we ask that kind of help sort out the process. So, if you are young and if you don't own any property and and the big issue is who cares for my kids? Yeah, a simple will is probably all you need. Okay. And you can go to an attorney, or you may be able to use a simple, online thing, and that could be enough. If you own property, well, then you probably want to have a little bit more of engage with an advisor or some sort of attorney, and you can sort through, do you have a will or do you have a trust? And, a will, it can vary from state to state, but often if you own property, a trust can be a better option. It avoids probate, which can be quicker. So those are the details that some of our advisors can walk people through with. I would say give us a call, talk to us, and we're happy to at least sort of point people in the right direction. It's not as complicated as it seems if you just sort through some questions in advance, and identify the helpers. That's really what you're doing. If something happens to me, who are the helpers? Who are the people who will care for the financials? Who are the people who will care for my children if they're minor children? Those are the big questions. And once you answer those, our advisors can help people walk through the process and get it done. Yeah, cool. That's good. And again, it's one of those intimidating things, but it sounds like once you just get started, if you have an advisor who knows what they're doing, it's not as scary as it might seem. So no, it can actually be a good thing, especially for couples. It actually opens up conversations that are good and helpful conversations to have but in the routine and the busyness of life, we don't ever have them.
Yeah.
And
right.
so it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So I think we're getting ready to wrap up here. So I think, Nate, what's hard and easy about money is it's just like anything else in life, right? Like it takes time. It's usually a little tiny increments over time. It's little small changes that make a difference. I think all of us wish, like you mentioned, cryptocurrency or whatever, we wish there was this magical pill or whatever that would just kind of solve everything quickly. But, again, from my limited understanding, I think it's just discipline. It's doing simple things every day, saving here and there where you can. And that's why I think people like, MB Foundation or financial advisors can help you shift those things that don't come naturally to us to just chip away over time. Is that true? What else would you add as we kind of wrap up?
I would totally agree. I think in any of these areas, the real opportunity is found in purposely doing the non-urgent things, like kind of you talked about, because over time it makes a difference. I remember a couple of years ago, I went back to the place I grew up. I hadn't been there in probably 15 years. And I remember what struck me is like, wow, look how much those trees have grown.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? If I had lived there for those whole 15 years,
mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't have thought about it, right? Because it's so little every day. Mm-hmm. And I think finances are a lot that way, in the day-to-day, we don't think about it, but you be intentional over time, these things grow and it just makes a huge difference. So there's opportunity, and it's all comes from being intentional and finding the way to sort of create space in the midst of the urgency of life and develop a plan. And then God blesses it and it can grow from there.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of us too, like if our budgets are tight, if we're just kind of barely making it, saving, $50 here, $100 here, it feels so insignificant, right? Like it just feels like, this can't really help me retire. This is just $100. But it's just that mind shift of, especially like you said, over time, if you can invest it early and let it compound over time, that's when the real things happen. So even if it feels small, just start somewhere and do it, right?
Absolutely. If that first goal is to get to $1,000, hey, you pack a lunch instead of buying lunch 2 days a week, you can get there. And then when your starter goes out in your car and you got to replace it, you're not carrying a credit card bill. Like there's small wins you can get and it begins to build. And that's how you celebrate it and grow from there.
Yeah. Okay. So to wrap up, if someone is needing some help with retirement or will, or just some of this kind of basic budgeting, real quick, how can we get a hold of MB Foundation? What exactly do you offer? Walk us through your little sales pitch here.
Yeah, so mbfoundation.com is our website. Our phone number's on there. You can contact us by email. Just reach out. We can talk to you about our investment options, savings options. We talk to you about, how you go about setting up an estate plan, getting your will taken care of. And then we don't do a lot of personal financial planning, but we do a personal planning from the sense of charitable giving. So particularly if you are older, there can often be, as you do your estate plan, as you give sometimes in different ways, there's different ways you can give that have significant tax advantages. So we specialize in that more than the personal finance.
Okay.
But there's also resources like this MoneyWise and others that we recommend that is part of that overall biblical managing of what God's blessed us with that we encourage and promote.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Nate, thanks again for your time today, for all your work with MB Foundation. And again, this is our second time with you. So for both episodes, really grateful for you sharing with us. And again, whether it's a lot of review or hopefully some new nuggets here and there, I think it's been really helpful. So thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Always a pleasure. Appreciate the work that you guys do with USMB Lead Pods.
A baby born in Bethlehem. This is Christ the Lord. As you celebrate the birth of our Savior, may this season fill you with the hope, joy, and peace that only Jesus brings. He is Emmanuel, God with us. May you sense His presence both now and always. As we wrap up this year, we are grateful for your support, which allows us to increase kingdom impact together. From all of us at USMB, we wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Well, I don't know about you, but I always really enjoy talking to Nate. I feel like he does a really good job taking some kind of big, higher level financial ideas and bringing them down to a level that I can understand and into kind of small, actionable steps that we can all use to improve our financial journey. wherever we are. So thanks again to Nate. And for you listener, I encourage you, if you have any of the needs that he mentioned that MB Foundation might be able to help you with, check him out, mbfoundation.com. They've got a lot of great services that I think would be beneficial to you. So especially if you're kind of reevaluating your finances at the end of the year or at the start of next year, I encourage you to check them out and take advantage of those services. And again, I want to add my word of thanks and a Merry Christmas to you, like our friend Janae just said in that little spot there from USMB. It's been a really great year. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We've got several great episodes that we're currently working on for next year. I'm just excited to keep the show going. So thank you for subscribing and helping us spread the word so that we can keep this thing moving. Just a quick heads up, we are going to take a couple weeks off. So I think the next episode will be released towards the end of January. So we will take a little bit of a breather, but we'll be back into January with our first episode of the new year. So with that, let's wrap it up. Thanks again to Nate, thanks to MB Foundation, and thanks to you for listening. A really great year. Can't wait to share some more episodes with you soon. And in the meantime, wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.